1990, Fontella Bass turned on her television, heard her own voice in an American Express commercial, and realized she hadn't seen a real royalty check in 25 years.
Do you think you are Mr. Big Star?
That is the story we tell here at RnBPulseTrack. The music that changed everything, and the artists the industry left behind after it took what it needed.
Deep down in your heart, that ain't right.
Tonight, 12 one-hit wonders from 1960 to 1985, the songs, the stars, and the stories that never got finished. Number 12, Me and Mrs. Jones, Billy Paul, 1972.
We got a thing.
By 1972, Billy Paul had been performing in the jazz clubs of Philadelphia for more than 20 years. He had sung alongside Charlie Parker and John Coltrane, studied at 3 music schools, recorded albums that went nowhere, and been signed and dropped more times than he could easily count. When Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff finally called him into Philadelphia International Records, and he was nearly 38 years old. Me and Mrs. Jones was written by Kenny Gamble, Leon Huff, and Carey Gilbert. A song about a secret affair told with so much aching restraint and so much quiet detail that when Billy Paul sang it, every year of obscurity and every club gig and every rejection poured directly into the performance. The way he stretches out Mrs. Jones still stops people cold 50 years after it was recorded.
Holding hands.
The song hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in December 1972 and held that position for 3 weeks. It won the Grammy Award for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance over Ray Charles and Curtis Mayfield. And a nearly 38-year-old jazz singer from North Philadelphia who had spent 2 decades on the verge of quitting became, almost overnight, one of the most recognized voices in the world.
We both know that it's wrong.
The follow-up records never matched it. The mainstream never returned the way it should have. And Billy Paul spent the rest of his life as the man who sang Me and Mrs. Jones, which is both a blessing and a specific kind of heartbreak for a man who had far more to give. He passed away April 24, 2016. And in Philadelphia that night, they played that song from every window, all night long. Number 11, Rescue Me, Fontella Bass, 1965.
Rescue me, or take me in your arms.
In 1965, Fontella Bass, daughter of gospel legend Martha Bass, walked into Chess Records in Chicago and recorded Rescue Me with a session band that included Maurice White and Louis Satterfield, both future founding members of Earth, Wind and Fire, and backing vocals from a young Minnie Riperton. And the song hit number 4 on the Hot 100 and spent 4 weeks at number 1 on the R&B chart.
Rescue me, come on baby, and rescue me.
But Fontella Bass helped write Rescue Me and was promised songwriting credit and royalties that Chess Records never delivered. She was paid a flat fee, told her name would appear on the legal documents, watched those promises disappear, tore up one insulting royalty check and threw it back across a desk, and spent years fighting a machine larger than she was allowed to be.
Take me, baby, let me, baby.
In 1990, she turned on her television in St. Louis, having lived in financial hardship for years, and heard Rescue Me playing in an American Express commercial. Her voice, her creation, her legacy, without her permission and without her payment. And in 1993, she sued American Express and received a significant settlement. Fontella Bass described that settlement as the Lord stepping right into her world. She used what she reclaimed to return to gospel music and tell her own story in her own way. She passed away December 26, 2012, leaving behind not just a hit record, but a textbook on every way the music industry betrays the people it cannot function without. Number 10, Mr. Big Stuff, Jean Knight, 1971.
The big stuff.
Jean Knight, whose real name was Jean Caliste, had been grinding since the early 1960s and getting nowhere until she set her microphone down and took a job as a baker at Loyola University in New Orleans. And then legendary Creole producer Wardell Quezerg called and asked her to come to Malaco Studios in Jackson, Mississippi for one final session. Mr. Big Stuff is a song about a vain, arrogant man getting publicly and permanently cut down to size. And when Jean Knight sang it, with that New Orleans grit and that razor-sharp delivery, it did not sound like a woman who had spent a decade being overlooked. It sounded like a woman who had been storing the fire the whole time.
You're never gonna get my love.
The song hit number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, spent 7 weeks at number 1 on the R&B chart, was certified double platinum with over 2 million copies sold, earned Jean Knight a Grammy nomination, and made her Stax Records top-selling female artist at one of the most legendary labels in the history of soul music. But Stax rushed the follow-up, missed the momentum entirely, and Jean Knight disappeared from the mainstream almost as completely as she had arrived. One phone call, one bus ride to Jackson, one session with a visionary producer, and a song that still gets every single room in motion 50 years later. Number 9, The Locomotion, 1962.
Everybody's doing a brand new dance now.
Jerry Goffin and Carole King were two of the most prolific songwriters working the Brill Building in New York. And when they needed someone to record a demo of a new song called The Locomotion to pitch to Dee Dee Sharp, they turned to their teenage babysitter from North Carolina, who was making $35 a week watching their daughter. Eva Narcissus Boyd recorded the demo. Dee Dee Sharp turned the song down, and producer Don Kirshner heard Eva's voice and announced it was already a finished record, releasing it as the very first single on his brand new Dimension label. And in August 1962, The Locomotion went straight to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Little Eva was suddenly on American Bandstand and national tours. A teenager from Belhaven, North Carolina, with no manager, no lawyer, and no ownership of a single note she had recorded. Navigating one of the most exploitative eras in music business history without anyone in her corner. She had follow-ups that charted, but nothing approached the height of The Locomotion. And by the mid-60s, she had faded back to North Carolina, raised her children, and watched Grand Funk Railroad and then Kylie Minogue each sell tens of millions of copies of her song across 3 separate decades. Little Eva passed away in 2003, having spent most of her adult life far from the studio where she changed the world at somebody else's kitchen table. Number 8, Piece of My Heart, Irma Franklin, 1967.
Didn't I make you feel?
Irma Franklin, the older sister of Aretha Franklin, recorded Piece of My Heart in 1967 on Burt Burns' Shout Records, earned a Grammy nomination for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance, and hit number 10 on the R&B chart. And it should have been the beginning of a career that ran right alongside her sisters. But the industry had other plans.
Break
written by Jerry Ragovoy and Burt Burns, and produced specifically for Irma's voice. The performance she delivered was raw and stripped open, every syllable pulled out like something being torn at the roots. The kind of record that should have broken a door permanently off its hinges. But Janis Joplin covered the song in 1968 on Cheap Thrills with Big Brother and the Holding Company. Screaming, explosive, and impossible to look away from. And the public planted its flag on Joplin's version, and Irma Franklin's original was quietly reclassified as a footnote to a story she had written first. While Aretha was collecting Grammys and being called the Queen of Soul, Irma was working as a social caseworker in Detroit making ends meet. The same blood, the same upbringing, the same God-given gift. And she passed away in September 2002, while the world was too busy listening to Aretha to look back at what Irma had given it first. Number 7, Tighten Up, Archie Bell and the Drells, 1968.
Hi everybody, we're Archie Bell and the Drells.
The record opens with a voice saying, "I'm Archie Bell of the Drells, from Houston, Texas. We don't only sing, we dance just as good as we walk." And what happened to the man behind those words immediately after he recorded them is one of the most painful and overlooked chapters in the story of a #1 record.
We won. In Houston, we just started a new dance.
Archie Bell recorded Tighten Up at Jones Sound Studio in Houston in August 1967. And then the United States Army drafted him and shipped him to Vietnam. While Atlantic Records released the single nationally in April 1968, and by summer, it had climbed to #1 on both the Billboard Pop Chart and the R&B chart. Archie Bell was serving in Vietnam when his record sat at the top of the American charts. Unable to tour, unable to appear on any stage or screen, unable to take a single step toward the kind of career that moment should have launched. While the label scrambled to keep the Drells visible without their lead voice.
I said we got a new dance now. And it's so.
He came home from Vietnam to find the window closed and the country already moved on. Tighten Up sold over 1 million copies and became a certified classic of its era. But Archie Bell never crossed over to the pop chart at that level again. The United States Army drafted him at the exact moment the music industry needed him most. We are at the exact halfway point of this countdown right now, and if you have been watching this far, you are exactly who RnBPulseTrack was built for. The people who want the real stories, the stolen royalties, the silenced voices, and the music that shaped everything. If you are just finding us for the first time, welcome home. Hit subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what we uncover next. We are just getting to the heavy ones. Let's keep going. Number 6, Stay, Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs, 1960. The shortest #1 hit in the entire history of the Billboard Hot 100 is 1 minute and 36 seconds long, and it was written by a 15-year-old boy in Lancaster, South Carolina in 1953, because he was trying to convince his date not to go home before her 10 o'clock curfew, and he lost the argument. Maurice Williams carried that song in his notebook for years before he finally recorded it with his group, the Zodiacs, for Herald Records in 1960. And when Stay hit #1 in November of that year, on both the pop and R&B charts, DJs reportedly played it back to back because it was finished before they could even reach the commercial break. At 1 minute and 36 seconds, The song is all so compact and so undeniable that the Four Seasons covered it. Jackson Browne covered it. And it appeared in Dirty Dancing in 1987 and introduced an entire new generation to a teenage argument from 1953 that somehow became timeless. Maurice Williams never had another pop top 10 hit. He kept performing, kept writing, kept working the Carolina circuit for decades. But Stay was the one that got away and stayed forever. A lightning bolt a 15-year-old wrote in 1953 that the world has never once let go. Number 5, Thin Line Between Love and Hate. The Persuaders, 1971. If you have ever been in a relationship where the person who loves you the most is also the one who sees most clearly how to hurt you. Thin Line Between Love and Hate was written for that exact truth in 1971. And it said something out loud that R&B radio recognized the moment it hit the airwaves. The Persuaders were Douglas Scott and James Barnes from New York City. And the song was crafted by the Poindexter brothers, Richard and Robert, and Robert's wife, Jackie Members, telling the story of a man who comes home early in the morning too many times to a woman who has finally run out of patience. Thin Line Between Love and Hate spent 2 weeks at number 1 on the R&B chart and reached number 15 on the pop chart. But what made it a cultural moment was the twist. When the bridge breaks and the listener slowly realizes the woman didn't just leave. She struck back, and the man is now in a hospital bed, bandaged from head to foot. The Persuaders never came close to a hit like this again. But the song was covered by the Pretenders, Annie Lennox, Isaac Hayes, and sampled across 5 decades. Because the story it tells is too precise and too human to water down, and it still lands with the same force today as it did on the very first listen in 1971. Number 4, Expressway to Your Heart, The Soul Survivors, 1967. Before Philadelphia International Records, before Backstabbers, before If You Don't Know Me By Now, before Gamble and Huff became the architects of the sound of Philadelphia. There was a single record in 1967 that proved the formula worked. And most people have never stopped to look back at where it started. The Soul Survivors were Charlie and Richard Ingwe, 2 brothers from Brooklyn, New York. And in 1967, they walked into a session with 2 young producers named Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, who were still hungry and still proving themselves. And together they made Expressway to Your Heart, which hit number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 3 on the R&B chart. The rolling, orchestrated Philly groove you hear on that record, the lush strings, the punchy horns, the rhythmic momentum, was the exact blueprint that would later carry the OJs and Harold Melvin to the top of the world. And Gamble and Huff knew the formula worked the moment the charts confirmed it. The Soul Survivors never had another major hit. They were the vessel that launched one of the greatest production careers in the history of American music, handed Gamble and Huff their first real proof that the sound was real, and then the express train left the station without them still standing on the platform. Number 3, Chapel of Love, the Dixie Cups, 1964. In the spring of 1964, the Beatles had American music in a chokehold. And nobody in the industry believed 3 young women from the Calliope housing project in New Orleans could walk through that door. But Barbara Ann Hawkins, Rosa Lee Hawkins, and their cousin Joan Marie Johnson were about to change that. Joe Jones, the same man who had You Talk Too Much in 1960, discovered the girls in New Orleans, brought them to New York, and got them signed to Jerry Leiber and Mike Stoller's brand new Redbird Records, where they were handed a song by Jeff Barry, Ellie Greenwich, and Phil Spector that Darlene Love had already recorded and the Ronettes had already turned down. On June 6, 1964, Chapel of Love hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, knocking the Beatles' own Love Me Do out of the top spot during peak Beatlemania. And it stayed there for 3 weeks, because 3 teenagers from the housing projects of New Orleans came in and handed the biggest band in the world a loss. Redbird Records folded by 1966. The hits dried up almost as quickly as they had arrived, and the Dixie Cups became one of the most beloved one-hit wonders in American music history. But that moment in the summer of 1964, when New Orleans walked in and beat the Beatles, never stopped being one of the most extraordinary things that ever appeared on a chart. #2, Easier Said Than Done, 1963.
My friends all tell me, go to him, run to him, say sweet lovely things.
In 1963, a group of active-duty United States Marines stationed at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina recorded what was supposed to be the B-side of their very first single, a throwaway flip nobody believed in, and watched it go #1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart simultaneously.
My buddies tell me, fly to him side.
The song was written by fellow Marine William Linton, who told interviewers the rhythm of Easier Said Than Done was directly inspired by the sound of the teletype machines clattering in the communications office at Camp Lejeune, which might be the most uniquely American sentence in the history of this countdown.
That he'll never know, because
Lead vocalist Anita Humes and the rest of the Essex weren't even proud of the recording. They pushed Are You Going My Way as their A-side. But radio flipped the record, listeners went wild, and by July 1963, men and women in uniform had the biggest song in America. The military does not pause for chart positions. The members had orders to fulfill. The label had no real plan for a touring group in uniform. And by the time the follow-up A Walk-in Miracle hit #12, the window had already closed. One accidental B-side, one teletype machine, and a #1 they could never have planned. #1, Mockingbird, Inez and Charlie Fox, 1963. Most people know this song from Carly Simon and James Taylor's polished 1974 version, but the original was written, recorded, and delivered by a brother and sister from Greensboro, North Carolina, who built it from scratch on Symbol Records, with no real promotional machine and almost no industry support behind them. Inez Fox had been discovered at a talent contest at the Apollo Theater in New York, and by the summer of 1963, Mockingbird was climbing to #2 on the R&B chart and #7 on the pop chart, a hand-clapping call and response masterpiece built from the bones of a traditional lullaby. But when Carly Simon and James Taylor released their version a decade later and went top 5, it was their names on every magazine and broadcast. While Inez and Charlie Fox, who created the song, watched someone else collect the recognition from their own work. Charlie Fox passed away in September 1980, just 43 years old, before he ever saw the full story told right. And Inez spent years trying to reclaim the legacy of something she built in her own voice, with her own brother, as a pure act of creation.